Welcome to Celestial Zodiac. Today we're diving deep into one of the most emotionally revealing and often misunderstood cycles in astrology, Venus retrograde. If you've ever felt uncertain about a relationship, disconnected from what once brought you pleasure, or questioning your worth, values, or desires, chances are Venus was retrograde at the time. This is often when attraction feels complicated, old relationship patterns resurface, and emotional clarity seems just out of reach. But Venus retrograde isn't here to take love away or create unnecessary loss. It has a deeper purpose, one that calls for emotional honesty, value realignment, and a redefinition of what truly brings fulfillment. Astronomically, Venus retrograde is an optical illusion. From Earth's perspective, Venus appears to move backward in the sky due to the difference in orbital speeds between Earth and Venus, creating a temporary reversal in its apparent motion. Astrologically, this apparent reversal symbolizes a turning inward of Venusian themes. Forward momentum in love, pleasure, and harmony slows, not to punish us, but to redirect attention toward awareness and truth. Venus governs attraction, relationships, affection, and emotional bonding. It rules our values, self-worth, pleasure, and the way we seek balance and connection. Venus also governs money, beauty, aesthetics, and desire, revealing what we are drawn to, what we enjoy, and what we believe is worth our emotional and energetic investment. When Venus turns retrograde, these themes don't disappear, they internalize. Instead of seeking connection outwardly, desire turns inward, revealing unresolved attachment patterns, unmet emotional needs, misaligned values, or a reliance on external validation that has gone unnoticed. Venus retrograde asks us to examine why we love, why we desire, and why we value certain people, relationships, or experiences, not just how we pursue them. It challenges superficial harmony, exposes emotional compromises, and invites a more intentional relationship with love, pleasure, money, and self-worth. Beyond attraction and surface-level harmony, Venus governs how we relate emotionally and how we assign value to people, experiences, money, and ourselves. It rules affection, bonding, desire, and the ways we seek connection and validation. Venus governs self-worth, emotional reciprocity, and the balance between giving and receiving. It also rules pleasure, beauty, taste, and what makes life feel enjoyable, meaningful, and emotionally nourishing. Venus governs relational momentum, how relationships begin, how intimacy develops, and how emotional patterns repeat over time. It rules romance and partnership, but also financial choices, spending habits, and the emotional motivations behind what we buy and invest in. Venus influences how we seek approval, how we respond to rejection, and whether our desires are driven by authenticity or by the need to feel chosen, valued, or secure. When Venus goes retrograde, these systems don't collapse at random. They slow, soften, or turn inward because emotional values are being reassessed rather than expressed automatically. Attraction becomes less instinctive. Desire feels more complicated. Relationships may feel distant, confusing, or emotionally quiet. Pleasure no longer comes from the same sources. Old relationship dynamics resurface because unresolved attachment patterns, unmet needs, or emotional compromises are asking for attention. Venus retrograde isn't here to deny love or enjoyment. It's here to expose where connection has been misaligned, conditional, or rooted in habit rather than truth. Rather than seeking harmony at any cost, Venus retrograde asks for emotional honesty. It reveals patterns of people-pleasing, overgiving, or self-abandonment that have gone unnoticed. By slowing external connection, It creates space to realign values with authenticity, teaching that real love isn't about constant reassurance. It's about emotional integrity and mutual respect. During Venus retrograde, desire becomes internalized rather than outwardly pursued. This is why attraction can feel inconsistent, relationships feel uncertain, and emotional clarity seems delayed. The universe isn't saying don't love, it's saying love with awareness. This is a cycle meant for reassessing emotional investments, where affection is being reciprocated, and whether desire is rooted in genuine connection or emotional dependency. Venus retrograde is not ideal for rushing into new commitments, but it is powerful for redefining relationship needs, healing attachment patterns, and restoring self-worth from the inside out. Venus retrograde also has a way of bringing unresolved relationships and emotional memories back into awareness. Old partners may reappear physically or psychologically. Past patterns replay internally, asking for understanding rather than repetition. This happens because Venus rules emotional memory tied to pleasure, attachment, and bonding. What hasn't been emotionally processed often returns during Venus retrograde, not to reopen wounds, but to offer clarity, closure, or a different outcome this time. Rather than chasing connection or avoiding discomfort, Venus retrograde teaches patience with emotional truth. It asks us to slow reactive attachment, examine where we've compromised our values, and reconnect with desire that is authentic rather than performative. When handled consciously, this cycle strengthens self-worth, refines emotional boundaries, and transforms surface-level attraction into deeper, more aligned connection. Emotionally and psychologically, Venus retrograde can feel quietly unsettling at first and then increasingly revealing. Instead of emotional energy flowing outward through connection and validation, it turns inward. Desire becomes reflective. Attraction feels uncertain. Relationships that once felt stable may suddenly raise questions. This isn't emotional instability. It's awareness surfacing where autopilot once existed. During Venus retrograde, unresolved emotional needs and attachment patterns rise into consciousness. You may find yourself revisiting past relationships, replaying emotional moments, or questioning whether certain connections truly align with your values. Emotional reactions can feel delayed or disproportionate, not because something is wrong, but because old emotional material is asking to be acknowledged rather than ignored. Venus retrograde also heightens sensitivity around self-worth and reciprocity. People often become more aware of where they've been overgiving, seeking approval, or compromising emotional boundaries. Feelings of rejection or dissatisfaction may surface, revealing areas where worth has been tied too closely to external validation. This awareness can feel uncomfortable, especially for those who rely on harmony or closeness to feel secure. Psychologically, Venus retrograde exposes unconscious relationship scripts, habitual ways of bonding, pleasing, or avoiding vulnerability. Patterns repeat not to punish but to be seen clearly. This is a powerful cycle for recognizing emotional habits that shape attraction and connection, and for choosing differently rather than reliving familiar dynamics. Emotionally, this period encourages honesty over harmony. Venus retrograde favors reflection over reassurance, clarity over comfort, and emotional integrity over surface-level peace. When discomfort arises, it often signals a deeper need for realignment, with values, boundaries, and the kind of love that supports growth rather than familiarity. On a deeper level, Venus retrograde can temporarily disrupt our sense of emotional certainty. We're used to measuring fulfillment through connection, validation, and external harmony, But during this cycle, closeness alone doesn't guarantee satisfaction. Inner alignment becomes just as important as emotional availability. This shift can feel unsettling at first, especially when familiar sources of comfort no longer provide reassurance, but it ultimately refines self-worth and relational clarity. Venus retrograde strips away performative affection and conditional harmony, revealing authentic values and desires, and teaching us that real love doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from being aligned with what truly matters. Now, how Venus retrograde manifests depends heavily on the zodiac sign it occurs in, because each sign filters Venus energy. Love, values, attraction, pleasure, and self-worth in a very different way. When Venus retrogrades in Aries, desire turns inward and independence becomes a focal point. Attraction may feel conflicted, and impatience can arise around relationships that feel restrictive. This retrograde asks for reflection on how autonomy and intimacy coexist, and whether desire is driven by impulse or genuine connection. In Taurus, Venus retrograde challenges comfort, attachment, and material security. Old relationship patterns tied to stability or routine may resurface. This is a time to reassess values, spending habits, and whether emotional comfort has been confused with fulfillment. When Venus retrogrades in Gemini, communication and mental attraction come under review. Mixed signals, indecision, or emotional inconsistency may arise. This retrograde emphasizes clarity in words and intentions, and a deeper understanding of how intellectual connection supports emotional bonding. In Cancer, Venus retrograde heightens emotional sensitivity and nostalgia. Past relationships, family dynamics, or unresolved emotional needs may resurface. This cycle invites healing around emotional security and learning to nurture without over-attaching. When Venus retrogrades in Leo, issues around validation, affection, and being seen come into focus. Desire for attention may clash with deeper questions about self-worth. This retrograde asks whether love is being expressed authentically or performed for approval. In Virgo, Venus retrograde can amplify self-criticism in relationships. Overanalyzing emotional interactions or feeling unworthy of affection may become themes. This cycle encourages compassion, emotional flexibility, and releasing unrealistic expectations of perfection in love. When Venus retrogrades in Libra, its home sign, relationship balance is deeply examined. Old partnership patterns resurface and people-pleasing tendencies may be challenged. This retrograde asks for honest reflection on fairness, boundaries, and mutual respect in relationships. In Scorpio, Venus retrograde intensifies emotional depth and attachment. Trust issues, power dynamics, or unresolved emotional bonds may surface. This is a transformative cycle that exposes emotional truths and encourages deeper intimacy through honesty rather than control. When Venus retrogrades in Sagittarius, beliefs about love, freedom, and commitment come into question. Attraction may feel restless or uncertain. This retrograde challenges idealized visions of relationships and asks for alignment between values and emotional reality. In Capricorn, Venus retrograde tests commitment, responsibility, and long-term emotional goals. Relationships may feel distant or serious themes resurface. This cycle encourages redefining loyalty, emotional availability, and what stability truly means. When Venus retrogrades in Aquarius, emotional detachment and independence become focal points. Relationship dynamics involving freedom, individuality, or unconventional bonds may need reassessment. This retrograde asks whether emotional distance is protective or limiting. In Pisces, Venus retrograde dissolves emotional boundaries. Idealization, nostalgia, or confusion in love may increase. This cycle heightens compassion and intuition, teaching the importance of discernment and emotional clarity alongside empathy. Before we look at how Venus retrograde moves through the 12 houses, it's important to understand what the houses represent in astrology. While zodiac signs describe personality traits and styles of expression, the houses describe areas of life, the environments and experiences where planetary energy shows up. When Venus retrogrades through a particular house, that area of life becomes the focal point for reassessing relationships, values, self-worth, pleasure, and emotional investment. This is where attraction slows, patterns repeat, and clarity develops through lived experience rather than external validation. When Venus retrogrades in the first house, attention turns inward toward identity and self-image. You may question how you present yourself, what makes you feel attractive, or whether your sense of worth is self-defined or externally driven. This is a time of redefining confidence from the inside out. In the second house, Venus retrograde highlights money, possessions, and personal values. Spending habits may shift, and questions around self-worth and security come into focus. This cycle asks whether comfort is rooted in material stability or inner value. When Venus retrogrades in the third house, communication and emotional expression are reassessed. Conversations may feel awkward or repetitive, especially in close daily relationships. This is a time to reflect on how words, tone, and curiosity shape connection. In the fourth house, Venus retrograde draws attention to emotional foundations, home and family dynamics. Past relationships or childhood patterns may resurface. This cycle invites healing around emotional safety and belonging. When Venus retrogrades in the fifth house, romance, creativity, and pleasure slow for review. Old loves or creative passions may reappear, not necessarily to be revived, but to be understood. This period emphasizes joy that is authentic rather than performative. In the sixth house, Venus retrograde affects daily routines, work relationships, and self-care. You may reassess how much you give versus receive in everyday life. This cycle highlights the link between self-worth, balance, and well-being. When Venus retrogrades in the seventh house, relationships and partnerships come under direct review. Old dynamics resurface, and questions of fairness, reciprocity, and commitment become unavoidable. This retrograde asks for honest reflection rather than surface harmony. In the eighth house, Venus retrograde deepens emotional intensity around intimacy, trust, and shared resources. Past attachments, emotional bonds, or financial entanglements may resurface. This is a powerful period for emotional truth and transformation. When Venus retrogrades in the ninth house, beliefs about love, meaning, and fulfillment are questioned. Attraction may feel uncertain as values evolve. This cycle asks whether relationships align with your deeper philosophy and long-term vision. In the 10th house, Venus retrograde affects public image, reputation, and long-term commitments. Relationships tied to career or status may need reassessment. This is a time to redefine success and emotional fulfillment on your own terms. When Venus retrogrades in the 11th house, friendships, social circles, and future goals come into focus. You may reconsider which connections truly support your values. This retrograde highlights alignment between shared ideals and emotional authenticity. In the 12th house, Venus retrograde operates beneath conscious awareness. Emotional memories, hidden attachments, or unresolved longing may surface quietly. This is a deeply introspective cycle that favors healing, forgiveness, and releasing emotional patterns that no longer serve you. To conclude, Venus retrograde isn't something to fear. It's something to work with. When we resist it, dissatisfaction grows and emotional confusion deepens. When we cooperate with it, clarity replaces illusion and self-worth becomes more grounded. This cycle reminds us that love isn't sustained by constant reassurance or external validation, and fulfillment doesn't come from chasing what once felt good. Sometimes the most meaningful transformation happens when we pause, reassess what we truly value, and realign our relationships with others and with ourselves. Venus retrograde doesn't take love away, it refines it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. New videos in this series are coming soon, so subscribing helps you stay up to date. Thanks for being here on Celestial Zodiac, and I'll see you in the next video.